My name is Deborah Peters, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join me today. The Deborah Peters Show is all about consciousness. As the world continues to go through all sorts of shifts and changes in consciousness, in mindset, in how we relate to each other, and based on what's happening in the world, I feel compelled to bring this show to you and to offer all kinds of amazing guests that have incredible backgrounds in my 5 main pillars. We cover health, wealth, relationships, self-expression, and business. And with that awareness that you increase within yourself and to reclaim your sovereignty, that's my main objective here. You know, we're born sovereign, and it's through our programming and conditioning in our lives that we lose touch with that. And so I really want to foster your reconnection with your own sovereignty. Today is a magical show. I can't even begin to tell you. My guests are incredible, guided, and protected by God individuals that have brought their greatest talent to the table and created an amazing line of supplements. Josh and Adam are just amazing guys. I've been working with them now for maybe a couple of months. And yes, I'm using their products. They are amazing. And, you know, I used to own a gym, so I understand supplements really well. It's been a lifetime of using supplements for various aspects of my health. Having these guys on my show today is absolutely incredible. I feel so blessed to have them here with me. And so thank you so much, Josh and Adam, for being here. And I can't wait to dive in here with you. We're going to cover some really deep conversations about what's going on in the world of supplements, what you're paying for. Be so blessed to have you share and bring this podcast into your network. Subscribe, comment. I would love to see your comments, and definitely get this out. We want to reach millions of people. That's our goal. I would want to ask a question, just to kind of back up a little bit.
Yeah, you had started by saying you were going to ask a question, I think about curcumin, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good.
So to me, when I hear that word, I think it's a food, that it comes from the earth, from Mother Nature. And that, I could be wrong, so I'm going to let you dig into this a bit. But to me, then that brings me back to like an old school theory of let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food, which
it's not a bad philosophy.
It isn't, and there are exceptions, and curcumin is one of those.
Well, sort of. It's interesting because
is it a food?
It's a spice. It comes from the turmeric plant. And the reason why curcumin is the active ingredient in turmeric, it's one of 3 molecules. It's curcumin, bis-dimethoxy, and dimethoxycurcuminoids. It was discovered because epidemiologists these are the statisticians that study global population diseases and trends. They found that certain populations on the face of the earth had lower cancer rates and lower Alzheimer's rates and diabetes rates. When they peeled back the onion, the independent variable was 2 to 3 grams of turmeric in the daily diet on a lifetime basis. So if turmeric was a part of the daily diet, not at small little bits, but at 2 to 3 grams in proportion.
And heated in foods with oils and things
daily,
to make it more absorbable.
Then the global population had lower cancer rates, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. With it, lower rates. Without it, higher rates. When they went back and tried to figure out what is it in the turmeric plant that had that bioactivity, it was the curcuminoids. So, but when they went to look at it as a therapeutic, all of the clinical studies came back as not really moving the needle. So they didn't understand. They didn't understand how to get it into the body, or what was going on with curcumin, what other cofactors might have been involved. And really what it came down to is they couldn't figure out how to release the molecules of the curcumin molecules into the body to help them interact with the body.
Yeah, and this will help put some things in perspective. The turmeric root, turmeric, potato, that The curcumin in a turmeric root is roughly 2 to 3% of that root. So when you do this extraction to this standardized ingredient called curcumin, it's a super small amount. So think about that in light of people doing turmeric. You could have cupfuls of turmeric and not get much curcumin.
Sure.
Okay, so you could be turmeric smoothieing your life away and still only be getting a small amount of curcumin. Then you have the second problem. The curcumin that has been extracted is crystalline in nature. It's a crystalline formation. It aggregates together. It holds on to its big brothers and sisters and cousins' arms. Red Rover, don't break through, and it won't absorb into the bloodstream. It doesn't absorb.
In fact, most of it stays in the gut and gets pooped out.
And one of the things that Adam and I will often talk about, I haven't done the math in a while, or the arithmetic in a while, Adam, but it's like even 95% standardized curcumin, you have to take about 750 milligram capsules a day to even be able to see a small signal in the blood. Just a micro signal. And sometimes you won't see a signal. It's crazy.
It's 8 to 12 grams. Is that what you said?
So,
yeah. 25. I was saying 750 milligram capsules.
It's a lot of product.
So what sets your process apart? Because that seems to me to be like there's two things generally, right? There's the source and then there's the process.
So we start with studied, farmer, socially, what do you call it? Cognizant,
social responsibility, fair trade, all the buzzwords.
So we start with that.
Yes.
And then we also use one of the only USDA organic certified curcumins in the market. So it's harvested in India with social responsibility on fields that are organic. So they're tested. There's no heavy metals, no pesticides, complete organic life cycle there. We start with that material, and then we use our patented technology to attach those curcumin molecules to the protein. So we solubilize it, get it into a molecular matrix. We then attach those molecules to the protein. So as the body digests that protein, you're getting all of those social responsible, organic, extracted molecules available to all of the tissues in your body. In other forms, it's bound to itself. It's not available to, it's going to go through your gut as a crystal. You'll get maybe 0.2 to 0.3% of that crystal will actually dissolve and become available to your body.
Yeah, and I would just mention, our production team, our lovely production team, we have such wonderful people here. They'll spend 10 plus hours just doing one batch of material. So we have all these fancy machines in here that do interesting things. And I don't want to give away our secret sauce to people out there, but it's really interesting. Yeah. And it's so fascinating what we do.
Yeah, and we make everything here. So it's 25,000 square feet of production space. Deborah, we couldn't find somebody that could do it for us.
I'm sure.
There were no contract manufacturers or co-packers that could make this technology for us. So I had to make a decision back in 2014 when we had the idea. We knew what we could do. We were seeing the results in people. It was either we were going to have to make it ourselves or put it on the shelf and do something else. And my other partners were actually like, we don't want to get into manufacturing. Yeah, we're going to focus on something else. And I was like, no, this is important. We got to do this. And so that was one of the real big impetuses for me to start Ultra Botanica back in 2015, was because we had to make this ourselves in order to make it right.
Do you think this is a calling on your life to do this?
Oh, it is. It's definitely there.
I feel that.
There was a point in 2014, actually 2013, before we even started any of this work. I have a chaplain, a friend of mine, that come in, and on Monday mornings he would come and pray with me for the company. I found, Deborah, that if I started my work weeks in surrender to God and praying and asking for Father's blessing and direction upon my life and upon the purposes that he had called us forth in order to live our lives, if I asked his blessing and his direction, everything worked out at work. Or meetings happened, things would move forward. It was like it was divine grease in the cogs of everything that I did. And I don't know if the divine grease is the right term, but
Hey, it's
That's
a
good.
new
I like
one.
that.
I like
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
and the weeks I forgot to pray and invite God into my life and into the life of what we were doing, it was like walking through molasses. So I just started. I brought in a chaplain, a minister that could use our help for his own family, and I paid him to come in, and we would pray. And 1 week, he came in, and I had all these technologies in development. I was the CEO of
Okay,
a
I have to
biopharmaceutical
stop
company.
him for a minute because this is really important. We need to paint a really accurate picture of your office, Adam.
Okay.
So here's what his
Maybe
office
not.
looked like when I walked in, okay? There was a table, there were sticky notes everywhere, there were amber bottles and purple bottles and clear vials and test tubes and beakers everywhere, and that's what Adam's office looked like. And some things had chicken scratch on it, and I couldn't read it.
Josh,
and
that
so
was
anyway,
that was my pipeline.
I know. Anyway.
I have a lot of I had a lot of things in the pipeline.
So,
And
rewinding the tape back
so
to the chaplain being in your office.
Israel,
Yep.
our
Israel
chaplain
Hanna.
came in, and he came down to pray, and he said, "Well, hold on a minute." He said, "God is speaking to me," and he went over to my wall and grabbed this curcumin technology off the shelf, put it in my hands, and said, "Adam, the Lord Father wants you to know that this is the most important thing in your office. You need to focus on this." And I was like, "Okay." Are you sure?
Strike one.
Well, I knew Israel had an experience with the product, so I thought maybe his prayer might be a little bit focused or jaded or colored because he had an experience. But I thought, okay, I know this guy hears from the Lord. I'll take that into my heart and I'll put it there. And I'm like, okay, filed away. Literally, Deborah, 3 days later, at a different prayer meeting, different group of people, this gal stands up and says that she came once. That was her first meeting she came to, and she never came again. She stood up in the middle of the meeting and pointed me out and said, "The Holy Spirit's been all over me this whole meeting, and I have to tell you this." And it was the same thing that she said, "The Lord's put your hand on something, and your hand is on the door to go through something and to focus on something, and He wants you to know that it's really important that you do that." I'm like, "Oh,
Strike two.
Okay, that's interesting." And so that was like, I was already convinced by that time that, okay, Lord, you're speaking to me. This is important. I'm hearing you. I will focus on this.
Sure you were.
I was. 3 days later, at Victory Church, which is, nondescript, non-denominational fellowship, a non-spiritual usher, the last guy I would think would have any kind of spiritual connection with Holy Spirit or with Father, came up to me after the service and said, "Adam, the Holy Spirit's been all over me the whole service while I've been standing here, and I have to tell you this." And it was exactly the same thing, Deborah, that the Lord had put something into my hand to work on, and it was important that I focused on it. And while he was speaking this, I stopped him and I said, "It's okay. I've already told the Lord I'm going to do this. I'm good. Yes, I hear you, Father. I'm doing it." And so I didn't need much more impetus after that to focus. It became, and you know what, Deborah, it was really interesting. The $150,000 worth of exactly the equipment that we needed in order to start manufacturing the stuff essentially was just dropped in our laps.
It was
Yes.
parked down. It was parked down the hall from Adam's office, and this friend of his said, "We've got some
equipment
over
that we
here. You wanna
inherited
come
from this
look
other
at it?"
company, and that could we maybe invest it in what you're doing? And it was, highly specialized. You couldn't get this stuff anywhere else. It was exactly what we needed in order to do this. That just happened over and over again. So yeah, I have a calling. There's a calling on us to do what we're doing. And we are doing our best to make this product, these technologies available. We don't ask anybody to just blindly believe in what we're doing, Deborah, to just go off and buy it. We actually give away free samples to people that want to try it, so that they can, before they even spend any of their own money, they can see for themselves whether our curcumin technology can make a difference.
If you like startup stories, and I know your viewers are entrepreneurial people and out there doing it like Adam and I, it's really interesting because you rewind the tape on two guys sitting over in a 200 square foot office, maybe, over there at Research Parkway.
Oh, it's smaller.
Yeah, and Adam's saying, okay, who's going to be our market? And so we talked and finally realized it's this demographic of people in pain, 110 million
100%.
people every day. And when Adam realized that, we sat down together, and he's like making labels, doing things on the computer so that we could come up with a FDA compliant 3-day trial stuck in an envelope that you sealed by pulling the sticker and pushing it down.
Yeah.
But it was legal. And so we did that, slapped labels on them, and I said, I'm going all over Oklahoma City. I'm going to call on compounding pharmacists. I'm going to call on integrative and functional medical practitioners, nurse practitioners, if they'll have me, independent health food stores. And I'm going to ask them, first of all, do you know about curcumin? And everybody went, oh yeah, look, we've got 5 different companies on our shelf. And I said, and how well is it working for you? And they all went,
Man.
well, it's very hit and miss. And I said, pick out your 5 closest friends, colleagues, co-workers, patients, or customers. And if you'll do this, I'll leave you only 5 3-day trials. Just 3 days. And they're like, 3 days? I'm like, just trust me. Just try this. Says if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. If it works, you're going to be calling me. I began to get my first calls within 5 days. And some of those people now, Deborah, literally sell $70,000 to $80,000 worth of 1 or 2 of our products a year.
Oh, there are
just because of the transformative experience people are having with it.
We work in 3 compounding pharmacies here in Oklahoma City. They used to sell all of the competitive products that you would imagine, and now they only sell ours because when these companies come in and say, well, why aren't you selling ours? And they say, well, theirs works. Yours really doesn't work that well. We're going to sell what works, and other stuff they'll sell of their products. I mean, we can name some big names here, but I won't. And it's just become a fact. We've in the places where our products are sold, not much else is sold besides ours in the curcumin turmeric space.
I have a question. I have a big question because I'm going to drop the C word. So
Please.
Let's talk about cancer. So you've said all the buzzwords, inflammation, the cells being wonky, like not being able to have the body function at its peak. And really it's just about lack of homeostasis at a cellular level. So what's going on there, and how does curcumin make that difference?
Well, first of all, I mean, curcumin has been, again, we discovered curcumin as a community because we first discovered that there were certain populations on the earth that had lower cancer rates. That was the discovery when we saw that there were these communities of people that as a group had lower cancer rates. That instilled a certain level of diligence in the scientific community to figure out what's causing that.
Sure.
So we know that curcumin as a compound can have an impact on cancer. What that impact is has been studied by thousands of researchers in the earth. There are 7 different cellular domains that curcumin impacts. It's a pleiotropic molecule. That's a fancy word for it being a molecule that affects multiple different things in a cell, in a living cell. The first thing that it affects is something called NF-kappa beta. NF-kappa beta is the cell's gas pedal for inflammation. And NF-kappa beta can be out of balance in cancer cells. It can also be it's the telephone line to the cellular, all of the cells around it, that there's an emergency or there's not an emergency. So if NF-kappa beta is activated, the cell is sending out all of these signals saying, bring help, bring help, bring help.
Okay.
The second thing that it affects is something called P53. P53 is the cellular auto-destruct button. It is In a lot
That's
of cancer
cool.
cells, it is that surfaced receptor is has been hidden
Sure.
because the cancer cells become they immortalize themselves by protecting those sites that could cause themselves to die.
Hmm.
And it's a really interesting, it's a very interesting question actually. Is it because of the cell's biology that it's suddenly not producing p53, or is it something else happening in the cell that's causing p53 not to be manifest? There are a lot of researchers like Warburg that have kind of hinted at that based upon their research and a lot of other people's research that cancer is a metabolic disease rather than a genetic defect disease.
100%. Yeah.
And if
I'm on that page.
you're on that page.
Yep,
And
no doubt,
I'm
no doubt.
definitely leaning towards that. I think the metabolic cascade is a definite rationale about why cancer cells are behaving that way. And
Sure.
you think about it, if a cancer cell is forced into fermentation as a way of surviving, which is
Yeah.
the least efficient way of producing ATP, it might also predispose that cell to saying, well, we need to be more resilient right now than we would normally be in a non-fermentation cascade environment, and so we're not going to produce p53 when we're on fermentation because we're going to have to be robust right now because
Yeah.
we're producing
Yeah, it's
inefficient energy.
triggered a new response.
Right, or triggered a new way of being. It's kind
Sure.
of like we're gonna button down the hatches and we're gonna be resilient right now as a cell. And when it's doing
Wrong signal,
respiration,
wrong time.
right, when it's
Right.
doing respiration, it's kind of like, well, it's happy-go-lucky. And if the p53 signal is activated, it's like, well, we've aged out now. I guess we're on our way out. But when it's doing fermentation, it might just be. That's my theory is that p53 is sequestered when the cell is doing fermentation because that cell is in kind of emergency operations mode at that time.
Right, because
Self-protection.
yeah, absolutely. Because if the respiration is off kilter,
Right.
then the right amount of energy in the right way is not getting to the cell, and that's going to throw the cell off kilter.
Right.
And when you get enough of that happening over time, which can come from a variety of ways or a variety of input, then it just makes sense that the cell becomes something different.
Exactly.
And so what I'm curious about, because I don't subscribe to the genetic theory, and I know that goes against the grain of the norm. But the thing is that over 1,600 people per day die of cancer in this country, and that's increasing. And
It is.
I can't imagine that in decades we haven't figured that out. But that might be another conversation. The point is that we're continuing to run these antiquated approaches to it. It's like its own paradigm that if really were of value, we wouldn't have 1,600 people a day and counting dying from cancer. So then the question that begs asking is, well, what else could it be? I think we have to ask that question, which when we do, we go down these other paths, like it's a metabolic respiratory situation. Okay, then how do we approach that?
It's also an invasive disease. It's a disease that is remodeling tissues. It's definitely it's a cell out of balance with its environment.
Yes.
And regardless of how we define that out of balance cell, the activity of the cell is to sequester out other cells. It gobbles up energy, and people are desperate for a solution. And it's the unfortunate reality is that the only limited solutions that we found have been to irradiate, to cut, and to poison,
Yeah.
and now to a limited extent to address some of these cellular defects, either on a genomic basis or on a pharmaceutical basis.
Yeah, Deborah, I was watching an excellent practitioner that was an integrated practitioner that worked for Sloan Kettering for years. and he ended up writing a book. But I was watching a specific YouTube of his, and I'm introducing two thoughts here because I know people that are listening. There's those that will. They'll have cancer and they're going to take a total traditional paradigm. There's others that are going to go the totally opposite direction, and they're going to say, I would never go get cut on. I would never go get, cytotoxic drugs put in my body. They'll go that way. And then there's those that actually are marrying those two worlds together.
Sure.
And I said all that to say the defining statement of this guy's talk was this. He said, having worked at Sloan Kettering for as many years as I did, he said, here's one thing I saw. Never choose only the traditional path.
Right.
He said, if you're going to choose traditional, you have to choose the alternative path alongside it.
Oh.
If you don't do that, you are going to do permanent damage to your body that even if you get rid of the cancer, is going to follow you the rest of your life, and it's going to predispose you toward other problems. Powerful stuff.
It's true. In fact, we need to marry both worlds together. We're total subscribers to that. We actually have products in our lineup that we call the brand is called OncoAdjunct. It's kind of self-explanatory. These are not treatments for cancer. These are adjunctive nutritional supplements that are designed to be adjunctive nutritional supplements for people that are dealing with cancer. We strongly, explicitly, over the top encourage everybody that comes to us to go and get a relationship with a naturopath that understands cancer, in other words, a naturopath that has cross-training in oncology, or a functional or A4M trained doc that has also been cross-trained in oncology, because they understand how to apply the utility of these natural ingredients to the paradigm of metabolic disease, sequestered sites on a cell, cellular pathways, looking at all of the other things that the oncologist has absolutely zero interest in understanding, does not want to put their own their medical license at risk to understanding, and they're only interested in what they understand. And so it's in the best interest of every cancer patient. And I'll share this with you. I found out today, in fact, that I went into my dermatology consult a week ago, and just because I have a lot of moles in my body and my family has a big history of moles, I went in to get checked up, and they took a couple of lesions off my body that they thought were suspect. I got a phone call today. I had a stage 1 melanoma taken off my left arm this morning. Or not this morning, a week and a half ago. And so I was suddenly faced with the reality, I have a melanoma on my body.
Right.
And so here I am thinking, it was astonishing. I called my wife, called my ma, called my friends and my family, and had a good cry that, what was going on in my life. But I'm facing the fact of I'm dealing with a pretty active, nasty potential cancer in my life. And here I am looking at all of the portfolio of things that I can do to aggressively deal with what is going on in my body. Thankfully, this was not a full thickness lesion. It hadn't gone down to the stratum corneum according to what they caught. So it's still in situ, as they call it. I'm still going to treat it as I have a potential, there could be cells elsewhere in my body. I don't know. And I'm facing this with the knowledge of I have so many tools that are at my disposal.
Yeah, thank God.
That can help me and my family to face whatever is going on, not with fear, but with an understanding of all of the different possibilities and tools that we can use.
Yeah, and like one of my dear friends who's a cancer coach and has brought so many people to a point of no evidence of disease or remission. When I first met him and began to talk with him, he looked at me and just in his very lovely, soft-spoken way said, cancer's not a capital C.
Excuse me.
Cancer's just a lowercase c.
Thank
That's something
you.
that we can deal with. And I think something really important for your viewers as well, Deborah, is to recognize I'm 63 and I've been passionate about alternative health since I was 16. We could compare notes on our bank accounts and what we've spent on supplements, right?
Right.
And but the reality of that is walking through that entire journey, all the way up to this point in time. Guess how many times I have seen individuals over the years. So let's just say I was 16 and now I'm 63. So we've got 48 years there, right? I have encountered various protocols and various things in nature over these decades that I have seen people cure themselves of cancer with before.
Yes.
I've seen them do that. So consequently, I want to bring some hope to your viewers that this isn't something new. This isn't something hocus pocus. Older cultures knew exactly what to do therapeutically with plants and herbs and things. And they weren't exposed to the environmental toxins that we experience every single moment.
Yeah, so the
of
environmental
every
toxins
day.
are much different today. It's the exposure that we put through our lives of processed foods have brought so much complication to our lives. Vaccines have brought complications to our lives. All of the different pharmaceuticals, the antibiotics, the complications and the all of the impact that we've put on our own genomic responses to these different environmental
and the trauma and the shock of how we are exposed to so much violence.
Oh, yeah, we could
that too.
just go down the road of what we experience involuntarily these days or voluntarily that they didn't 20 years ago.
I would also say because we've
30 years
sanitized our lives so much that our immune systems can be
Yeah.
hyperactive, right? So there's
That's
the
true.
opposite side where we sanitize our children from all of the environmental exposures of parasites and
So we really should
microorganisms.
eat mud pies that our children make, right?
Hey, I grew up on a farm, and it was like always outdoors in the dirt with the animals. And
Yep.
It's what one of the treatments for eczema is? It's actually giving a pinworm infection to people that have eczema. You can give people a worm disease and their eczema will go away because finally the anti-parasite system in the body, the eosinophils, have something to focus on rather than themselves.
Wow. They're just hypnotized until they have that outside
They
stimulus,
want something
right?
to deal with.
Yeah.
They are
They're looking for a fight, right?
Our eosinophils were designed to kill parasites and protect our bodies from worms and microorganisms.
I have to ask, though, do you then give them ivermectin and give them fenbendazole afterwards?
You can.
Once you give them the
obviously.
Okay, all right,
And then
making
that
sure.
clears that out. Yeah. Love the fenbendazole. Love the ivermectin.
Yeah.
So obviously, Deborah, there's so many things that we have at our disposal right now. It is truly overwhelming I think for people to try to navigate all of these different knowledge paradigms themselves. In fact, myself as a researcher, somebody who's imbued in the field of cancer research, I find it overwhelming. The amount of information and the number of paradigms that people subscribe to in dealing with cancer or autoimmune diseases, just in and of themselves. There are so many paradigms there.
Yeah.
So that's why we need to get a good ally on our team. That's why we so strongly suggest that people get a good naturopath or a good functional medicine doctor as a part of their medical team. It doesn't relinquish our personal responsibility of self-knowledge,
right,
and of becoming, learning how to become whole spiritual human beings, learning how to forgive, learning how to love and to be kind, trust,
learning how to accept love.
Yes,
just learning how to receive.
Yep.
It's that's a whole other learning. I mean, it's growing up. I was never taught how to receive. Everything was about give or suffer, or give and suffer. And that's a societal program.
And that's out of balance.
Yeah,
right.
Really. I think that anytime something goes wonky in the body, to me, the way I look, it's such the norm in society. To live your life in stress is the norm. And I think as we went through the pandemic where people were at home and they weren't doing 2-hour commutes twice a day. And as we've gone through COVID and people have stepped back from the treadmill, and they've had an opportunity to reevaluate their lives and what they do with their time, what they want to do with their life, how they want to contribute, what are they doing with their talent and their gifts. I think that's really been a blessing. And then, the change and the shift from that, we're just starting to see, some of that. And with that comes, really taking responsibility for your health, and not just, everything's consumption, your environment, your relationships, your food, your water, your beverages, your thoughts, your emotions, and it all comes into the body, and the body's the processing center, and that can really throw your cells sideways.
Yeah, I had one of my closest friends in the world is wanting to lose some weight, and they know I understand that paradigm better than they do. And so they were chatting with me, and I kept hearing them say, I need your help, Josh. I need your help. I can do this with your help. And I said, and we've had this same conversation before, okay, many, many times with this particular person. At the end of the day, I can offer them everything I want to, but ultimately that particular person is going to have to make a decision. And it may be that people are standing with that person and holding their hands up and walking them toward that decision, but it's going to end up being on them.
It's a decision.
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So how can people continue to enjoy your knowledge and your wisdom? Do you have a blog, a podcast? How can they
We do.
keep educated?
We got a couple of things.
The corporate website is ultratoday.com, and it's a beautiful website, and it really allows you to kind of begin to walk in the world of this unique technology that Adam and his colleagues created. And then secondarily, we have a podcast that we do called Ultra Life Today. And wherever you find podcasts, you can find Ultra Life Today. Ultra Life is one word, and then today is the second word.
Fantastic. Yes, we definitely want to send people over there. And what would you like to leave as a last sort of thought for folks that have been watching us today?
Well, for me, because I have a former life in building a company that had 2 million customers, and it was all people that were in pain. So I learned absolutely what it's like, that pain messes up marriages, and it messes up business partners' relationships, and it messes up relationships with kids. It is just a horrible thing. And so I would like people to know there are alternatives to what you may have been taking out there, being prescribed. And we bring a technology to the table that unlocks some of these things to make dramatic change and transformations in your life. And I know what it's like to live in pain, and I know what it's like to live outside of pain. If you want to find your life again, and you want to actually begin to excel and enjoy life and begin to be a doer again, you need to get out of pain, and we have some unique ways to help people with that.
Yep. All you need to do is go to ultratoday.com and ask for a free sample. If you call us, you can get a free sample without paying any shipping, or you can go online and order a free sample. I think you only pay for the shipping charge, and you can try it yourself and see if any of the Ultra Botanica products can make a difference in your life.
Deborah, would it be appropriate for me to share our mutual friend that we've spoken about, the name of his blog, for individuals that may be dealing with cancer out there and may want to begin to look at and learn that there may be other ways to look at cancer?
And sure.
Okay. Joe Tippins is the name of the gentleman that hosts the blog. He doesn't make any money off that blog, and his blog is mycancerstory.rocks. So that's all one word there. My Cancer Story, the period, and then ROCKS. It's a really interesting place that people can begin to learn about potentially other ways they may want to think about cancer.
So let me just do a close off and give you a website again.
Sure. It's ultratoday.com, ultratoday.com, ultratoday.com.
Perfect. All right, stay with me. And remember, everybody, you must get into alignment with yourself in order to create the changes that you like in your life. So stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.